Sure. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. You know,
That
and
sounds
there's
fantastic.
nothing quite like pounding gin, right? I mean, it's like,
I wouldn't know anything about that. I don't know what you're talking about.
Exactly.
Hello and welcome to the Rose and Rockstar from the Rockstar CMO effing marketing podcast and the Marketing Podcast Network. I'm your host, Ian Truscott. I'm not a rock star, but I am a CMO. It's Saturday the 24th of May, and in a moment I'll join my chum, Chief Troublemaker at 7th Bear, Robert Rose, in our virtual bar, the Rose and Rockstar, where he recommends one of his fabulous cocktails and I pick his brains on a marketing topic that is top of mind for me. This week, Robert's cocktail will take some practice, and we are back to AI as Robert shares how he uses generative AI for research, like a marketing intern, but a bit more than that. But first, we need to pay the bar tab. I'll be back in a moment.
We'll be right back after this word.
We'll be right back.
After this word.
Raise the rudder! Raise the sails! Raise the sails!
Captain, an unidentified ship is approaching. Over.
Roger. Wait, is that an enterprise sales solution?
Reach sales professionals, not professional sailors. With LinkedIn ads, you can target the right people by industry, job title, and more to reach the professionals who are more likely to find your ad relevant. Plus, with 1 billion members on LinkedIn, that means you'll have access to 130 million decision makers and 10 million C-level executives. That's a lot of millions of the right people. Get started today and see how you can reach the right buyers with LinkedIn's enhanced targeting tools. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Go to linkedin.com/MPN to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/MPN. linkedin.com/MPN. Terms and conditions apply.
So, you just started using LinkedIn Premium. Now what? Well, on your premium company page, you noticed around 7.5 times more page engagement and 5 times more page views. Well done. And now, new clients are messaging you. All because you're using LinkedIn Premium, which helps you get the business growth you want. Think big, small business. Think big. Start your free trial at linkedin.com/premium small business. That's linkedin.com/premium small business.
Hello, my friend, and welcome to the bar.
Thank you very much, mate. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you. It is a warm spring week here in Southern California, and spring has sprung, and so it's you know, and we're on the cusp of a long weekend. So, I'm sure there's a long weekend there as well, because it seems like every weekend in the UK is a long weekend. But there you have it. There you have it. So looking forward to grilling some meats this weekend and enjoying some sunshine.
Nice. I was wondering what your tradition would be for the holiday. I get the two holidays confused. Which holiday is this one?
This one is what they call Memorial Day.
Memorial Day,
So,
that's right. Because I remember when we were there, the pools would open now, right, on Memorial Day, and then they would close in the next holiday at the end of the...
That's right.
In
right.
August,
right? So you have today's
the fall.
I mean, theoretically, it's supposed to be a very somber day because it's where you remember all the people who died in the wars. But it tends to be also the unofficial start to summer. So
yeah, mind you, you in California, you probably have your pools open all year round. I think it's more an East Coast thing, isn't it?
Well, yes. Yes, that's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Splendid.
So to celebrate, we have a wonderful cocktail to have on a warm summer or warm day, spring, whatever it is. This one's a little more complex than your normal cocktail. It takes a little time to put together. It's called the Clover Club. And it's basically what you do is, so it's a raspberry sort of flavored drink. So if you got fresh raspberries, all the better. But raspberries, and then a little bit of fresh thyme. Gin, of course. So as much gin as you like, but usually 1.5 parts of gin. So just to, it's because it's a gin drink and there's no other alcohol in it. And then you have egg white. So you're going to make a little egg white here, and then just a little bit of lemon juice, etc. And so what you do is in a cocktail shaker, so you're going to muddle your raspberries and thyme together, just muddle all that together so it's a nice little fruit mixture. Then you're going to add the gin, then add the egg white, and then if you want, put in a little bit of lemon juice in there. And then you're going to shake that until it basically doesn't sound sloshy anymore. So because what you're going to do is you're going to foam up those egg whites by doing that. And you start to feel a bit of pressure in there. And then, so basically you put in ice then to fill the shaker, and then shake it again until it's really, really cold. And then strain all of that into a cocktail glass or a coupe glass, depending on, like a martini glass kind of thing.
Yep.
And then if you really want to get fancy, you can dust the top of that with a little cinnamon or a little lemon zest curl or whatever you want. So what's going to happen is you're going to get this beautiful cocktail with the egg white sort of at the top. It looks frozen. Of course, it's not frozen. It's just cold. But and then you have to take your Instagram photo right away because the egg white's going to break down pretty quickly here, and it's going to turn into kind of a mess. But drink them quickly while they're beautiful. So there you go. That's the Clover Club.
Nice. I was thinking that the making slows you down from the drinking, but now you're saying you need to drink them quickly. So I think
sure, yes, absolutely. There's nothing quite like pounding gin, right? I mean,
I wouldn't know anything about that. I don't know what you're talking about.
Exactly.
I actually have all those ingredients this week, so I might give that a go for pizza movie night.
Oh yeah, there you go. It's it takes a little bit of practice, but you'll get it.
What about the little seeds that come in the raspberry? Do you have to worry about them?
No, not really. I mean, they'll be just in the drink and not all of that. Yeah. But it's
nice.
It's the kind of thing where you don't really notice it. Look, you put enough gin in, and you're not going to notice anything, right? But
I love it, man. So that's fantastic. So that's our drink for this evening and for the weekend. I've got a question for you, mate.
Let's hear it.
It actually comes from two sources, both of them you. The first one was, I think that we probably talk about your podcast on this podcast more than any other podcast, including this one. But I was listening to this on marketing this morning, and what I was really interested in is how you were talking about how you use generative AI, and you use it like a research buddy, and you were actually talking about how, contrary to what everybody's saying about creating content with generative AI, it isn't saving time. It's actually helping you in your process. And I also picked up on the fact that you'd written about that on the Content Marketing Institute's blog. Your article, Generative AI isn't the world's greatest marketing intern, it's something better. So I want to ask you about that. It's the world's greatest marketing intern or better than that? Tell us about that.
Well, there's two layers to this, I would say. The first is, generally speaking, and I'm actually going to do some deeper writing on this. I'm actually considering writing a short book on this. Is that we had, for 25 years into the digital experience, and, it all started, let's call it 2000, just to make the nice round, arguably it was 98 or 99, but 2000 just to keep the nice math. We started in with the digital orientation of business. It was the last great disruption of, commerce and business. And when we think about that for a moment, what happened during that time was we started to get wrapped around the axle of speed and efficiency and performance as sort of the same idea around the foundational idea of what business needed to be. It was the birth of move fast and break things. It was the birth of speed as sort of a foundational element of what it meant to perform in business. So we got all kinds of things. We got agile. We got everything was built around the function of how rapid can we actually bring things to market. first mover advantage, all those things came out of that era. And we've been moving faster and faster and faster ever since. And at some point, and I've been asking my clients this of late, when they ask me if we can move faster or how do they move faster, I ask them the simple question of how fast is enough? Like how fast do you need to go? Because if the answer is just more and faster, then that's not a strategy, right? That's not.
Yeah.
And we have basically gotten so wrapped around the axle of speed as the foundational thing that it is to the point now where we don't really understand why we're doing anything. Because there's just no time. There's no time to think about it. We just have to move and, ship it, sort of the classic, you must ship rather than, analyze things. And when it comes to creative, that is that there's an inherent tension in that. And so now that's the first layer. The second layer is with this new sort of overriding, perhaps the second in as many decades, biggest disruption that has happened to business is the growth of artificial intelligence. And so what we are doing now, and this is where I think the biggest mistake is being made, is that we're automatically assuming, because it's been in our DNA for the last 2 decades, that the purpose of AI is to help us go faster, to help us produce faster, to help us get insight faster, to help us strategize faster. And so with, whether you look at it from how quickly can it provide output, in other words, how quickly can it create a blog post or a research report or an article, how fast can it rewrite things, how fast can it produce a strategy for us, how fast can it, articulate a persona or ICP for us. Everything is built on the speed of output, the speed of throughput of AI as a partner, quote unquote, or an intern in marketing. And the interesting thing when we start to look at that is perhaps we're getting that wrong. Like, what if, and it's a question, I think and it bears a lot of sort of circumspect, is what, when you think about it, what if AI is actually our invitation to finally get out of the role of speed as the foundational value? In other words, what if we actually looked at AI as a means of saying, hey, it gives us permission to slow down because we can actually go deeper into areas that we don't, the corners that we can't see around, the horizons that we can't see beyond, because we can use AI to help us think harder, think more, create more deeply. And that's my big question. And so, and I use it because what inspired this was the way that I am finding the most value out of AI, which is what you got to at the beginning of your question, which is when I think about AI, the way I use it is very often in my work, and a lot of my work is writing. And so as I start writing, whether it's long form thought leadership, put that in rock and roll quotes, if you will, but articles, blog posts, really whatever I'm writing, an email to a colleague or anything like that, what I find is that using ChatGPT as my tool of choice helps me understand what's missing. Like, what am I not providing? Yeah. And so instead of dashing off an email or dashing off a blog post, that, what I'm finding is that it is great to have it look at what I'm creating and say, what didn't I cover that I should? What am I missing? Let's pressure test this idea. Let's look at this idea and make suggestions about how I might think more creatively about it, think more deeply about it, or understand other people's perspective on it. And in that case, what I'm finding is that, I'm on deadline to write an article every single week. And normally if I would spend, this is anecdotal, there's no data behind this, but basically, if I spend 2 hours a week writing a blog post because it's on deadline and because I need to do it and because that's how much time I want to spend on it, what I'm finding is over the last 6 months, I'm basically spending 50% more time writing my post, my article every week. So, roughly 3.5 hours now, or 3 hours, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, but what is happening? And I'm looking and I'm happier. Now, I don't know if the article is any better or not. Only the audience can assign whether or not I'm creating better material over the last 6 months than I have been. But I'm more satisfied with it. I feel more confident about it. I feel like I've explored the topic more deeply because I've spent that extra time with AI to help me reshape. So the output in that work is the least interesting part. What it does, if it rewrites a sentence or if it, looks at my content and says, here's how I would make suggestions to the writing or the style. Does it occasionally come up with a turn of phrase that I really like and will include? Of course it does. But mostly 95% of the output is like, I don't care about it. What I care about is that it makes me think harder. It makes me go wrestle with that idea more. It makes me think more deeply about whatever topic I'm writing about. And I think that might be the ultimate value, the invitation of value that AI has. But I also think I'm tilting it with Mills, by the way.
Well, I'm interested in both of those things because, the first thing I'm interested in is the fact you're writing a book. And I think that anybody who puts a line in the sand of where we are with generative AI right now and starts to commit it to a book, I think that sounds a really interesting project. And you writing a book is an interesting project anyway. But the experience you're having is exactly the same as I'm finding as well. So I don't think it's just you tilting at windmills, and I'm hoping it's not just us sort of holdouts that have some who kind of give a shit about the writing. Do you know what I mean? And how it sounds and the voice of it. We don't want to crank the handle of generative AI and get it to do all the work. We want to go along the journey with it, and then along that journey you discover more things, right? And I think that's what we've talked about generative AI can rob you of that. And it sounds to me like the picture I'm forming in my mind of you doing that is that generative AI is going along the journey with you. Would that be a good way of summarizing it?
I think, I think that's exactly it. I think it's, it's, as I say in the piece, the way I've been thinking about this is I get into, as I'm wont to do, maybe a little too much. I go back to, you ever study in philosophy in college or in any other place, the practice of epistemology?
No, but I'm curious.
So epistemology. So yes, sorry.
Has epistemology got anything to do with gin?
Yeah.
I know that
there's
one.
A joke right there that I'm. There's a joke right there that I'm not going there. So epistemology is basically it's a philosophy. It's a field of study where you look at why you believe what you believe. Right. And so the idea behind the philosophy is that it's not enough to just believe something. You also have to know and have a good rationale for why you believe what you believe. And, there's lots of jokes to be made there about now our current politics and the way that we sort of operate here in the United States. But the point of it is that the value of the philosophy is to explore ideas more deeply so that you come to core beliefs because you actually not only know what you believe, but you know why you believe them. Right. And to me, that is, so when you start thinking about AI, so it's the boundary, right? So so if you think of it like almost like if you think of a framework like a cloud, right? There is a boundary between what you know and what you don't know. And that overlap, that fuzzy overlap that gets to what you know versus what you don't know is something that we wrestle with all the time as humans, right? So we know why, a great example of this, right? A zipper works, right? And if I asked you to explain a zipper, you probably could explain a zipper. And and you believe that they work. But if I said, okay, but tell me why you believe that zippers work. Yeah. You probably don't know. You haven't explored that deeply. And it's a totally banal topic, but there are many, many topics from our faith to business to strategy to why we're going to the grocery store that basically encompass this idea of, you believe you need to do it, or you believe it, but you don't know necessarily why you believe it. And if you explore that, you may understand that it's for very superficial reasons. It's because some expert told me to, right?
Yeah.
Or it's because somebody that I trust told me to. And so the idea is that you not only take the step to actually understand why you believe it, but you actually go then figure out the evidentiary based about why you believe something. And so that, to me, is, if you look at a true purpose of generative AI, that to me feels like a true and genuine purpose that could help us be better people.
Yeah.
And so you can, because what AI is really good at is sifting through tons and tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of data and helping you understand where you need to explore more deeply, and why you might want to do that. Now, you have to go validate all those things yourself, because, of course, AI hallucinates and it makes shit up and all of that. But at the end of the day, that to me is the true value here, is understanding that it can extend the boundary of what we know and what we don't know, and help us be better, more creative, think more deeply, deeper strategists, right? So it doesn't excuse us from the work. And in fact, it's a prompt to do the work.
Yeah. And this is so deep. I mean, normally we try and have this conversation around sort of 20 minutes or so, just a quick bar conversation, but this is so deep. I could really dive into this. One of the things that I'm hearing here, and I think the way you're using generative AI and the way that I'm trying to use it as well, is you actually have to be very purposeful in challenging, and so in getting it to challenge you, I think, because I think the natural vibe right now with generative AI, and ChatGPT is my robot of choice as well, is it will agree with you and it will try and help you make the points you want to make. But to your point, we're looking for challenge and we're looking for gaps. And you really got to try and prompt it very carefully to say, look, what am I missing? And think to do that. Otherwise, it's just going to agree with you and say, that's great, attaboy, Ian. Whereas actually, do you find that? Or is this just my experience?
No. It's exactly right. It's AI is trained to answer in the affirmative, right? So everything every idea you suggest to ChatGPT, there's some very funny memes, by the way, going around online, which test this, right? Where it's like they suggest, really dumb ideas, and it's like, that's brilliant. That's a brilliant idea, So everything you suggest as an edit or as an idea. And so you have to actually physically, you have to literally ask it to pressure test, right? You have to ask it to look for the contravening ideas that you want to explore. And it gets really good at that. But basically what you're not asking it to do is to judge your ideas. What you're actually asking it to do is locate the patterns for to saying things that would contradict those ideas. Yeah. And it's really good at that. So you're not asking it to give you, lovely, lovely sort of compliments. What you're asking it to do is to pressure test an idea. And that's, prompting certainly comes into that, but it's honestly just asking the right questions. It's asking better questions of the AI.
Absolutely. And it's so seductive to just go along with it, and the fact that you've got these great ideas. And maybe that's where the Turing test in these things are, is if one of these things finally tells you, no, that's a shit idea, we've finally got generative, we've got general intelligence. So that'll be the milestone for ChatGPT. If it tells you, no, that's a shit idea, we've kind of got somewhere with the robots.
Yeah, that's right.
That's probably the point that they're going to take over the world. And also, I have now got epistemology in my head, and I think I've named this podcast all wrong. I think I should have called it Epistemology. Anyway, mate, that's fantastic. And actually, and just to on the point of your articles that you pump out every week, these are significant articles. These are not like my little Tuesday 2 cents that I do once a week. This is a significant piece of work, I think. So, hats off to you, mate. And so when people want these kind of ideas, where are they going to find them?
they will find it on our website. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna do a different promo for a change.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to actually promote my little Substack, because I did write about this on my email newsletter.
Yes,
which you can find at seventhbearlens.substack.com.
Cool. But there's also a link on seventhbear.com to your Substack as well.
There is a sign up form right there on the website. Yes, which is seventhbear.com. But if you want to go right to the Substack with the homepage, which I absolutely love the way that they lay things out.
Yeah, cool. And I'll also include a link to this article we've been just discussing that's on the Content Marketing Institute. Generative AI isn't the world's greatest marketing intern. It's something better if people want to go and find that. And when people spin the dial on the interwebs, where are they going to find you, mate?
They will find me on LinkedIn primarily, where I also just published this little article.
Ah, splendid. And will you be in the bar next week?
I guess so, yeah. You'll have me back.
Fantastic. I'll see you then. Cheers. Thank you, Robert. It was wonderful to get a question from you in the bar, or maybe a comment on how you're using generative AI as we figure this out together. I've not mentioned this before, but if you head over to rockstarcmo.fm, you can leave a voicemail. It'd be splendid to get your voice on here. So that's a wrap on our visit to the Rose and Rockstar. Thank you for joining us. You can find links to Robert and me, and of course a link to the article we discussed in the show notes at rockstarcmo.com. We can also find links to our newsletter, blog, previous episodes, and all the things. Coming up this week on Rockstar CMO FM, on Wednesday, Jeff is back in the studio. We'll be discussing the role of the CMO as the voice of the market, not just marketing. And as you heard, Robert will be back in the bar on Saturday. And in the meantime, just remember, as Dewey Finn said in the film The School of Rock, you can't just say it, man. You got to feel it in your blood and guts if you want to rock.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Robbie Samuels hosts the On the Schmooze podcast. Robbie, tell listeners what to expect from the show.
Since 2015, I've interviewed entrepreneurs who overcame challenges to achieve success in their field or industry. Tune in to On the Schmooze to listen as I ask deep questions to elicit untold stories about leadership and networking.
And where can people subscribe?
Find the show at ontheschmooze.com or on marketingpodcast.net, or just search for it wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard them. Go subscribe. This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.